on. Wait for me, butterfly, wait for me. I'm only trying to set you free. Wait for me, problems, wait for me. I'm only human, so let me be. Let me be.
Hello. My name is Watson. Would you please welcome Andrew Grill to the stage?
Good morning, morning Belfast, and it's fantastic to be here. It's not every day you get introduced by a computer, and it's not the first time Watson has actually introduced me, so it's great to have him on board here this morning as well. Now that video, you might think, does he just play that to sell IBM? I played that for two reasons. One, I think it shows the journey that we've been on as a company over the last 105 years. We've had to change and adapt as the industry has changed and adapted. We've had to change and adapt as technology has changed and adapted as well. The second reason is that video was actually made by another IBMer. He was so frustrated, his friends and family kept saying, "Why are you working for a company that makes typewriters?" He's like, no, we're more than that. And while I'm not wearing jeans today, all those other things are true. And it's fantastic. I've been in startups for 12 years before I joined IBM. So for someone like me to go away from the startup environment to join Big Blue was a big deal for me as well. But I wanted to talk about cognitive. And I'm going to explain what that is in a minute and how it might be useful to you when we talk about big data. So I'm going to tell a lot of stories this morning because I love storytelling. But the first story I have to tell you is the story of why I'm actually here this morning. It's because of a thing I like to call social serendipity. It's about using social media to be in the right place at the right time. And the only reason I'm here in Belfast this morning is because of one tweet. One tweet I sent on the 15th of January 2011. The tweet simply said, "Arrive San Francisco." Now, I travel a lot for this job. In fact, after my keynote, I'm going to have some coffee, then I've got to go to the airport to fly to New York to do this all again in another country. And what will happen is when I land in New York at Newark, I'll actually tweet that I've landed New York. Now, what happened next in San Francisco was amazing, and this is this social serendipity. Another Australian who I'd never met saw my tweet and said, "Why don't we catch up?" So we had lunch in Fisherman's Wharf. He introduced me to the founder of a company called Cred that looks at social media influence. And 2 years into that job, IBM came knocking and said, "We'd love you to come across and help us with our social business journey." But I wanted to talk about the whole history of computing, where we've come from and why big data and things like Internet of Things is now so important for all of you here. And what I'd like to do is lay a few little pebbles on your tables so that throughout the day you can think, what are we doing about this? Are we preparing our business and our team and our strategy to take advantage of these new technologies? So from the turn of last century to about 1940, we had the tabulating era. Now, as a company, we were heavily involved in that. Some of our first products were things like this, that read punch cards. And what we did in the tabulating era was we instructed computers what to do. Probably some of you in the room played with these things, punch cards. Anyone remember these? I remember sending a bunch of those off to the Angle Park Computing Centre in Adelaide, South Australia, to produce things like this, the Snoopy calendar. And occasionally I got back, when I did some basic program, reams and reams of paper, because I'd actually done 10 print hello world, 20 go to 10, and the whole thing had just gone off crazily. But then after 1940, we got to the programming era that many of us are in right now. And the programming era is when we basically instruct computers to do if-then logical things in loops. And there's only so much you can do by programming computers. And I remember programming in BASIC, and this is probably something that will put things on the screen, this sort of thing you may be familiar with. Anyone remember or recognise this device? A few in the room. It depends on the room I'm in and the audience I've got. A more mature audience, let's say, will tell me that it's a Sinclair ZX80, and that was my first computer in 1980. A more millennial audience will go, what the hell's that? That was my first computer in 1980, and it had 1K of RAM, 4K of ROM, and it programmed in the BASIC language. So I really started programming all the way back then. And a few months ago, my daughter Madeline and I were going past the Science Museum in London, and we popped in, and behind the glass case were a whole lot of computers. There was an Apple II and the Sinclair ZX80. And Madeline turned to me, she said, "Daddy, isn't that your computer you keep talking about all the time?" "Yeah." "It's behind a glass case. You must be really old if it's in a museum." So yeah, I feel kind of old. Anyone remember this noise? Yeah, not that long ago, dial-up. Now again, depending on my audience, some people think it's a fax machine, and then a millennial will come up to me and say, "What's a fax machine?" That's a 33.6 kilobit modem. And that's how I started my life online in 1983, dialing up things like this, bulletin boards. And I would ring up and leave messages we now call email, and then hours later I would ring back in to see if someone had actually left me a message. Now I knew I was hooked on this online thing back in 1983, when my father had to get a second phone line because I was always dialed up seeing what was going on. So we've had tabulating era, we've had the computing era, programming era, now we are into what we like to call the cognitive era. Now cognitive is about thinking. So when you tabulate or program, you tell a computer what to do. The cognitive era, we actually start teaching computers what to think. And they learn, and they get better and better. And it was interesting, J.C.R. Licklider, back in 1960, if you will excuse the non-politically correct language here, he said, "Man-computer symbiosis is an expected development in a cooperative interaction between men and electronic computers. It will involve very close coupling between the human and the electronic members of the partnership." He predicted that back in 1960, one day computers and humans would actually work together. So instead of it being humans versus machines, it's now humans plus machines. And there is, as I'll explain over my presentation, so many things that can come out of when humans actually work in sync with computers so that they learn and they can actually do tasks that we never dreamed that we could. So the great chess champion Garry Kasparov back in 1997 lost against Deep Blue. And when he licked his wounds, he came back from that and he said, "Well, I actually want to support people that want to use computers to win chess games." And what he found was that when you actually put humans and computers together, you actually have amazing results. And he was saying things like, teams of humans plus machines dominated even the strongest computers. Human strategic guidance combined with the tactical acuity of computer was overwhelming. We can concentrate on strategic planning instead of spending much time on calculations. Human creativity was even more paramount under these conditions. So what Garry was saying is that he's seen firsthand that when you apply human thinking to computational effort from things like cognitive systems, they can be really, really exciting. The problem with programmable computers, though, is they actually can't handle what we call unstructured data. So unstructured data like social media noise, or comments on a website, or information from an aircraft. It's very hard to program that because you're not quite sure what you're going to expect. But if you can program a computer to be able to handle this unstructured data and make sense of it, then analytics becomes really, really exciting. And what cognitive computers do is they actually learn from their mistakes. And the best example he's been on already is Watson. Who here knows about Watson? So back in 2011, Watson played Jeopardy, and he of course won. There's a fantastic documentary about the behind the scenes of this, and what I've learned was that back in 2010, the team had to commit to the producers they were going to do this. But in 2010, Watson wasn't anywhere near able to beat Jeopardy, so they took a huge risk. I'm going to play a short clip just to remind you of what happened, and when you see a shot of the audience, these are actually the researchers in Yorktown, New York, that were hanging their career on this match. It was a 2-day match, and the first day Watson wasn't doing so well. On the second day he came through, but watch the faces because these are people that programmed this and actually put their career on the line. Let's see what happened.
This is Jeopardy, the IBM challenge.
Let's go to legal ease for 1200.
This person is appointed by a testator to carry out the directions and requests in his will. Watson.
What is executor?
Right.
Same category, 1600.
Answer A double.
That was the moment when I knew it's over.
Our 3 players have made their wagers. The category is 19th century novelists, and here is the clue. William Wilkinson's An Account of the Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia inspired this author's most famous novel.
What Watson wants to do then is preserve the lead, not take a big risk, especially with Final Jeopardy, because just like for humans, Final Jeopardy is hard for Watson.
You came up with what? Who is Bram Stoker? You are correct. Over to Ken Jennings now. And we find, who is Stoker? I, for one, welcome our new computer overlord. Now we come to Watson. Who is Bram Stoker? And the wager? Hello, 17,973, and a two-day total of 77,147.
So I've actually had the pleasure of standing on the very stage where Watson won Jeopardy. That's actually filmed at our research facility in Yorktown. They actually created a studio over a month apparently. So I've actually stood on the stage where he won it, which is mind-numbingly amazing as an IBMer. But look at that last question that Watson got right. Think of the structure behind that. Watson had to learn trivia. He had to learn Wikipedia. He had to go through all of that so that when that one question came out, he had to remember the answer. And as you saw the answers come up, you would have seen there were 3 options, and he was basically giving a confidence level on which one he thought was right. So Watson isn't going to take over people's jobs. Watson is going to look at all the information and then provide a hypothesis and actually say which one he thinks is right, and here is the confidence level. And by the way, here is where I got it from. So think about how this can be used for medical research. You can actually train people to be as smart as an oncologist. And then you can actually provide the diagnosis and actually work out where these have come from. But what's all this got to do with big data? Aren't we here at a big data conference and you're talking about cognitive? Well, I think big data plus cognitive is where the rubber really hits the road. And we'll hear from speakers later this morning and today about their actual use cases for where they're using big data. But I want you to think about if this cognitive thing is happening and we and other companies are investing in it and it's providing results like you saw there, where can you actually team this amazing amount of data that is coming out of your companies, out of things like IoT, and actually make sense of it? So let's look at what cognitive can actually do. What are the capabilities that you could actually apply to your own businesses? First of all, it creates a deeper human engagement. You saw on the video there that we actually are now friends with Elmo. We did a partnership with the Children's Television Workshop to help early children learn about everything. And as a father of a 10-year-old girl, I'm really impressed that we're doing this. But I found an example that's even better than what we're doing with Sesame Street. Have a look at this little dinosaur.
Hi, my name is Lily.
Hi, Lily. Nice to meet you.
How far is the moon?
The moon is about 250,000 miles
That's
from
a
Earth's
lot.
average. What is 2 plus 2?
4.
Awesome job, Grayson.
What is the speed of light?
The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. Can you count to 6?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Super.
Tell me a knock-knock joke.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Lettuce.
Letters who?
Lettuce. It is freezing outside.
My favorite color is orange.
Okay, I'll try to remember. Your favorite color is orange.
See you later, alligator.
In a wild crocodile.
Tell me a story.
How about we make a story together?
So I think that's amazing. So you saw things like the toy is actually remembering the child's name. The child teaches the toy their name, and you can actually name the toy and those sort of things. But that's a small device. It's back into the cloud. All the smarts are done back in the cloud. It's actually analysing those things in real time. It's remembering, it's giving a personalised learning experience for the child. And so that is the use of big data and cognitive to actually learn what's going on and help a child learn through the years. The other area that cognitive can be used for is to scale and elevate expertise. I touched on the medical use case before. So I've learned that an oncologist, a really smart one, takes about 25 years to become an expert. Then they go off and retire. So how can you retain that knowledge? How can you teach the new breed of oncologist all about this information? So if you start teaching a cognitive computer like Watson how to diagnose oncology issues, and then Watson starts learning there. That is where it becomes really, really smart. And I was actually in our New York Experience Lab a few weeks ago, and we were talking about a use case where a young boy called Kevin was presented with a problem into hospital, and it took them 6 days to diagnose what he had. On the 6th day, a nurse saw that he still had red eyes, and she thought, that could be Kawasaki disease. And it found out that's exactly what he had. But in our Experience Centre, what we actually show is how Watson would have done that. Watson would have gone through all the medical history, he would have provided a hypothesis, he would have looked at time-sensitive diseases, and he would have then come up with a high degree of confidence that it was Kawasaki. And he could have done that in 2 hours. So 6 days of a boy being in pain and not knowing what's wrong with him versus a 2-hour diagnosis. This is big data that learns. So I'm really impressed that these sort of things are being applied to the big data problem, but it's about learning, not just analytics. The other thing you can do is actually infuse your own products to become cognitive. And I'm going to show you a quick video that I shot in Orlando last January. In our internal system, we have a thing called Tame. It's a sort of a chat bot, chat system. You can chat to other IBMers. And we thought, why don't we actually generate something called Ella Watson, and Ella can learn all about the IBM processes. So how do I book a meeting? How do I book travel? If Ella was to learn all about that, I could actually talk to Ella.
Logs into the system, Ella goes, collects their connections profile information, knows where they work, who they work with, and what skills they have, what their job role is. We can ask Ella questions about things like travel or reimbursement or business process, business conduct guidelines. She comes back with answers very quickly, which otherwise it would be bothering your coworker. So this is something that takes a few minutes for sure. She asked me what the meeting is about. I'll say planning. And then she's going to ask me if the meeting is urgent. And if I tell her no, she'll check my calendar, she'll check Hank's calendar, she'll realize that I'm talking about Hank, who is my coworker, Hank Jones. She knows that next Friday is February 12th, not February 7th.
So again, this is removing the menial tasks that we sometimes ask people to do because we already have the answers. And then Ella can learn about you, can learn that you work with Hank, can learn that you don't like working on Fridays and those sort of things. So again, this is where big data can be infused into your own products. So think about whatever products you have that are customer or business facing and how you can actually use big data and a cognitive engine to actually make sense of it. And one other final view is, enhanced exploration and risks. I think when you actually have all this big data and you have a way of understanding it and learning about it with cognitive, you can actually take greater risks. Just as you saw with Watson on Jeopardy, he gave 3 answers with 3 confidence levels. So if you were being asked to invest money on the basis of that answer, as what Watson was for the Jeopardy game, he had, and you would have a higher confidence that that would actually be the right answer and that would be the avenue you should go down. So it might make in financial systems, in planning new cities, the ability to do things in a very iterative way. So again, I think that's another way that big data and cognitive can be fused together, providing you better headlights about where you might be going. I want to spend the last few minutes looking at where big data and IoT fits. You're going to hear about IoT. Who here knows what IoT is? Internet of Things, basically connecting stuff together. I have an IoT device here, it's called a Fitbit. So I have instrumented myself. I am now connected to the internet. And I only got this fairly recently. It's actually changed my behaviour about how I exercise because I want to get those steps in, and I'm actually competing against some of my friends to get 10,000 steps a day. And it's really amazing how, as a human, wearing an electronic device and knowing what's happening and instrumenting myself, my behaviour is changing. But I think what's really interesting is when you actually pull that together. So there's a company called Under Armour that are famous for t-shirts, and more recently they've bought up companies that do things similar to Fitbit. I heard their CEO speak in New York last January. He said they now have 250 million people that have the app and a device. 250 million people. That's 250 million probes. That's 250 million people that are augmented, that can actually share information and provide better headlights as to what's happening in their age group. So for example, up here, it says, it's a bit hard to read, do you know there are 4.5 million males in your community in your age group? And Watson's used to actually make sense of that. So now you've got this amazing amount of big data in IoT. You've now got a community of 250 million people, and you can start making sense and look at trends. And I think that can be used to actually help save lives and look at trends about health and where people exercise and those sort of things. Are you exercising too much? this could be something that actually changes the way humans behave. And you've got things like aircraft that are being instrumented. Airbus, apparently per flight, generate about 0.5 terabyte of information. Now in the old world, all this big data, you would say, what do I do with it? How do I look at a dashboard that tells me good and bad things? But every day these planes land and take off, and there's a cycle there. And so cognitive systems can learn about whether a particular engine part is going to fail. So again, I think we're going to see an incredible amount of new data from things like IoT that becomes big data. And I think the only way to make real sense of it is not just instrumenting on a dashboard or running some analytics, it's going to the next step, and that's cognitive. And the best example of a massively scalable IoT platform is the weather. The weather affects every single one of us personally. The weather affects every single one of our companies. And if you can start predicting the weather in a better way, then we might actually have better products. We might have, reduced turbulence. We might have different insurance policies when we know where bad weather is going to happen. And last year, we actually bought the weather company. And when I heard we'd done this, I thought that's a really smart move, because the weather company has basically got hundreds of thousands of probes out there, weather stations. And if it can process hundreds of thousands of probes in real time, we could process anything. So I found this clip that the weather company made about what they call the 62 miles. There's 62 miles between us and the atmosphere. And those 62 miles are things that we want to know more about. And this is what the weather company's doing with IoT. So the thought I want to leave you with is, think today about how you can make your data think for itself. Thank you very much.